Regret has a quiet voice. It does not shout. It whispers in empty rooms. It visits you in the stillness of morning, or just before sleep, when the world is silent and you're left alone with your thoughts. Unlike mistakes, which can be corrected, or failures, which can teach you, regret stays with you. It is what you feel when you realize not just what went wrong, but what was never tried. It's not about what happened, it's about what didn't. And for many older adults, especially in their 60s, 70s, and 80s, these regrets build up quietly over the years. They don't always speak them out loud, sometimes out of shame, other times because they think it's too late to change. But here's the truth, it's never too late to live with intention. It's never too late to understand those regrets, name them, and shift course. Not just for yourself, but for the people coming after you. In this video, we are going to look at 7 of the most common silent regrets that seniors carry. Not the dramatic ones, but the quiet everyday wounds of the soul. And most importantly, we'll talk about how to avoid falling into these traps while you still have time. These regrets aren't about not getting rich or missing out on fame. They're about things that matter much more deeply, not speaking up, not resting enough, not forgiving, not choosing yourself sooner, letting fear make too many decisions, holding back love, and mistaking survival for living. If you're watching this, that means you still have time, and that is a gift. You don't have to carry these regrets for the rest of your life. You can break the cycle, reshape your story, and move forward lighter, with more peace and less weight. This video is not here to make you feel bad about the past. It's here to remind you your future is still yours. Whether you're 60 or 90, you are still becoming. And by facing these regrets honestly, you open the door to healing, clarity, and even joy. Let's walk through them together, not to dwell on the pain, but to make space for what's still possible. Regret 1. I stayed silent when I should have spoken up. Among the many quiet regrets carried into older age, perhaps none weighs more heavily than the regret of silence. Not the silence of peace or wisdom, but the silence of fear, of shrinking, of biting your tongue when your heart was screaming to speak. Many elders don't regret what they said. They regret what they didn't say, what they felt deeply but buried, often for decades. This silence isn't passive. It is a learned behavior, taught by generations that valued harmony over honesty, politeness over presence, and submission over strength. Especially in cultures or families where challenging authority, speaking out or disagreeing was frowned upon, silence became the survival strategy, but what helps us survive in one season can slowly wound us in the next. Think of the opportunities missed, the moment you could have stood up to your partner when they belittled you in front of family, the time your adult child demanded too much, and instead of setting a boundary, you smiled and said, "Of course." The times you allowed your opinion to be erased in a conversation because you did not want to be difficult. The career dreams you shelved because you were told they were unrealistic or not your place. These aren't isolated moments. They add up. Each act of silence becomes a brick in the wall that separates who you are inside from what the world sees. By the time many reach their later years, they're not just carrying one regret. They're living inside a fortress built of many, many silences. And here is the truth that aches the most. Most of those people you protected with your silence don't even remember. They've moved on. But you still remember what you didn't say, what you held back, what you lost the chance to express. This kind of regret is slow and corrosive. It doesn't announce itself loudly. It whispers when the room goes quiet. It visits in the early morning, in moments of reflection, in the sigh that escapes when you look back and think, "Why didn't I just say something?" But here's the good news. It's not too late. Speaking up now may not change the past, but it can absolutely change your present and your future. You can start by acknowledging the pain of silence. You can write letters you never send. You can rehearse conversations in your journal. You can begin one sentence at a time to reclaim your voice. More importantly, you can commit to no longer being silent about the things that matter to you. You can say, "I need help. That didn't feel okay. This is important to me. I'm not comfortable with that." You are allowed to speak without being perfect. You are allowed to have emotions. You are allowed to take up space. Your voice doesn't have an expiration date. You are not too old to be heard. In fact, your voice now carries the weight of experience and perspective. That makes it more valuable than ever. Yes, it might be uncomfortable at first. People may not be used to the new you. That's okay. Let them adjust. Let them grow. Let them realize that your silence was never consent, it was survival. And now you are choosing something different. Authenticity. Don't let another year pass with unspoken truths lodged in your chest. Say what you need to say, clearly, kindly, and without apology. Because silence doesn't protect relationships. Truth does, because silence doesn't build dignity. Voice does, and because silence doesn't free you. Speaking up does. Start today with one truth. Say it, write it, sing it, whisper it. Just don't carry it in silence anymore. You deserve to be heard. Regret, too. I let others define my worth. As we grow older, we begin to reflect on not just what we've done in life, but how we've come to see ourselves. And one of the most painful realizations that many seniors face is this. For far too long, they allowed others to define their worth. This regret is not always loud or dramatic. It often lives in the background of a person's life, in the choices they made, the paths they didn't take, the passions they buried, and the self-doubt they carried like a shadow. It shows up in the person who never applied for the job they wanted, because someone told them they weren't too qualified enough. In the mother who stopped painting after being told art was a waste of time. In the man who avoided expressing his emotions because he was taught that real men don't cry. The messages we receive from others, especially in childhood and early adulthood, shape the way we perceive ourselves. If you were constantly told you were too sensitive, too slow, not smart enough, or not strong enough, you start to believe those things. And once those beliefs take root, they influence every decision you make, even decades later. You begin to live not as the person you truly are, but as the version others made you believe you had to be. This regret often reveals itself late in life, when the distractions fade and you're left with space to think, to feel, and to ask, whose voice have I been listening to all these years? Mine or someone else's? Many elderly people discover that they've spent entire lifetimes trying to meet standards that were never truly theirs. They stayed in jobs they hated because it was expected. They chose stability over passion because someone told them passion was irresponsible. They ignored their instincts because they were raised to defer to others. They let partners, bosses, teachers, and even their own children define their value. And now, with years behind them, they realize all that time spent trying to prove themselves to others could have been spent learning to accept themselves as they were. But here's the powerful truth. Just because you've lived this way until now doesn't mean you have to keep living this way. You can rewrite this story. You can begin to question the old voices in your head, the ones that told you weren't enough, the ones that made you feel small. Ask yourself, who said that? Were they right? Do I still believe that now? You may be surprised how often the answer is no. You can also take small steps to reclaim your sense of self. Try something you were once told you couldn't do. Speak kindly to yourself. Surround yourself with people who see your worth without you having to earn it. Give yourself permission to grow, to heal, to be proud, not because someone else approves, but because you do. And remember, worth isn't earned by meeting someone else's expectations. Worth is inherent. You were born with it. You still have it. It never left you, even when you forgot it was there. So if you've spent years believing you weren't good enough, smart enough, talented enough, lovable enough, let this be the moment you stop. Let this be the day you say, I am enough, as I am, right now. Because you are. No one else has the right to measure your value. That power belongs to you, and always has. Regret 3. I spent too much time worrying about what others thought. If there's one silent thief that robs more years of peace than any other, it is this: worrying about what others think. For many, this begins early in life and clings on like a shadow, shaping choices, silencing desires, and dimming joy. And by the time older age arrives, some people look back and realize they lived more of their life through the lens of others than through the truth of who they really are. Think about how many decisions are made not based on personal values, but out of fear of judgment. The clothes you wore to look appropriate, the job you stayed in because quitting would look irresponsible. The partner you chose because they fit in with what was expected. The hobbies you abandoned because someone laughed at them. The quiet dreams you let go of because they seemed silly. Over the years, trying to meet the unspoken expectations of society, family, peers, or even strangers becomes exhausting. You're not living, you're performing. You second-guess what you say. You hesitate before sharing your opinion. You water down your emotions. You overthink what others might think. And for what? Most people aren't thinking about you nearly as much as you fear. They're too busy worrying about themselves. And yet the fear of judgment holds so many people hostage. It convinces them to stay small. It stops them from trying new things, from asking for what they need, from showing who they truly are. It whispers lies. You'll embarrass yourself. They'll laugh at you. You'll be rejected. This regret builds slowly. At first, it's just a small compromise, but over time it grows. And when you look back, you don't remember what others thought. You remember what you didn't do. This is the ache of a life half-lived. The pain of realizing that you missed out, not because you weren't capable, but because you were too worried about seeming foolish, unlikable, or wrong. But here is what time teaches us. Freedom begins the moment we stop letting other people's opinions dictate our choices. Older adults who have broken free from this trap often describe a feeling of lightness. They finally say what they mean. They dress how they like. They pursue interests they ignored for years. They stop apologizing for existing. And almost always they say the same thing. I wish I had cared less about what others thought sooner. So how do you start letting go of this regret? Start by recognizing the pattern. Notice when you're about to say or do something, and pause. Am I doing this because I want to or because I'm afraid of how it'll look? Then practice courage in small ways. Wear the thing that makes you feel good. Speak your truth in a conversation. Share your story, even if your voice shakes. Every time you do, you chip away at the power that fear has over you. It's also helpful to ask, whose opinion actually matters? Chances are it's a much smaller group than you think. And the people who truly love you, love the real you, not the performance. In your later years, your time becomes more precious. Spend it living authentically. Let the world adjust to your truth, not the other way around. Because at the end of the day, the loudest critic is often the one inside your own head. And the best way to silence it is to live boldly, kindly, and unapologetically. You don't need permission to be who you are. You just need the courage to stop pretending. Let the regret end here, not with more years lost to other people's opinions, but with a return to your own voice. That's where peace begins. Regret 4. I didn't take care of my body until it was too late. Among the most common regrets shared by older adults is one that feels both physical and emotional, not taking care of their health when they had the chance. It often begins with small neglects, skipping checkups, brushing off pain, putting off exercise, eating for convenience instead of nourishment. Years pass. The body remembers what the mind tried to ignore. I thought I had more time. That is a sentence whispered in countless hospital rooms, doctors' offices, and sleepless nights filled with discomfort. It's not about chasing youth or having the perfect figure. It's about realizing, too late, that health is the foundation that supports everything else. When we're younger, it's easy to take energy for granted. You can bounce back from poor sleep. You can eat fast food and still feel fine the next day. A few extra pounds feel harmless. Stretching seems optional. Doctors feel like a hassle. You tell yourself you'll get serious about it later. But later comes faster than expected, and not always with a second chance. By the time the warning signs can no longer be ignored, when the knees ache with every step, when the blood pressure is too high, when the diagnosis arrives, it's not that change is impossible. But it is harder. The regret is not just for the body lost, but for the years when you could have felt better, moved more freely, lived with more vitality, if only you had paid attention sooner. Health regrets often come with guilt. People blame themselves for what they ate, for being too sedentary, for ignoring advice, but shame doesn't heal the body. What helps is compassion. The truth is, most people aren't taught how to take care of themselves in sustainable, loving ways. We're taught to push through, to keep going, to reward ourselves with comfort instead of care. The good news, it's never too late to choose differently. Even in your 60s, 70s, 80s, or beyond, Your body will still respond to nourishment, movement, rest, and care. You may not reverse everything, but you can still gain energy, reduce pain, improve your mood, and enhance your quality of life. It starts small. Walking a little more each day, drinking more water, getting better sleep, eating fewer processed foods and more whole ones, stretching, breathing deeply, listening to your body instead of ignoring it. It also means advocating for yourself, seeing the doctor, asking questions, getting second opinions, following through on what your health requires. It's not about fear, it's about self-respect. One of the kindest things you can do for your future self is to stop delaying the care your body deserves. Not for appearances, not for numbers on a chart, but because your body is your home. It carries you through every experience. It holds your memories, your laughter, your sorrow, your joy. When older adults are asked what they would do differently if they could turn back time, many don't mention wealth or fame. They say, I would have moved more, slept better, drunk less, smoked less, asked for help sooner. Let this be your reminder, not just to avoid regret, but to reclaim your strength. Treat your body not as a burden or an afterthought, but as a partner in the life you still want to live, because even now it is not too late. Regret 5. I focused so much on others I forgot myself. It's one of the quietest regrets, and also one of the most painful. Many people reach the later chapters of life and realize they spent decades meeting everyone else's needs, and somewhere along the way they lost track of their own. This is especially common among caregivers, parents, spouses, anyone raised to put others first. And while kindness and service are beautiful traits, the regret comes from never giving yourself the same care you gave everyone else. You said yes when you were exhausted. You gave money when you barely had enough. You stayed up late helping, woke up early fixing, filled your days solving problems that weren't yours to carry. You gave your energy, time, and presence without limits, because you loved them. But love without boundaries is a slow erosion. Bit by bit, you disappear from your own life. By the time your children are grown, or your job is done, or the caregiving ends, you look in the mirror and ask, who am I now? You may feel empty, unsure, or invisible, not because you lack worth, but because you've forgotten how to center yourself. When you always orbit around others, it's hard to remember how to stand still. This regret doesn't blame anyone. It's not about bitterness, it's about the realization that your needs mattered too, and you were worthy of rest, joy, attention, and space all along. The problem is that society often praises selflessness. The more you give, the more you're seen as noble, good, strong, but no one teaches you how to refill what you pour out, and by the time you realize the well is dry, the damage is done. So how do you reclaim yourself, especially later in life? Start by honoring your own presence. You are still here. You still matter. Begin to ask yourself daily, what do I want? What brings me joy? What do I need to feel good today? These are not selfish questions. They are survival questions. Then, take small actions. Sit in the sun. Read what you love. Say no without guilt. Choose rest. Explore something new. Remember your dreams, even the small ones. Reconnection starts with permission, to pause, to enjoy, to put yourself on the list. Also, learn to receive. You don't always have to be the helper. Let others show up for you. Accept the offer. Take the hand. Say yes when someone asks what you need. And finally, forgive yourself. You did the best you could with what you knew at the time. Now you know better. Now you can live with more balance, more peace. Think back to moments when you wanted something simple, a walk alone, a weekend to rest, a day to not be needed. How many times did you push that aside to take care of someone else? At the time it felt noble, necessary, maybe even loving, but how often did you deny your own humanity for the sake of keeping everything together? The truth is, no one was ever meant to give endlessly without replenishment. Even the most loving hearts need room to beat for themselves. And when that space is denied, over and over, resentment can quietly creep in. You may have felt it in the sighs you suppressed, the tears you wiped away in private, the envy you felt toward people who seemed free. But here's what's powerful. Recognition is the first step toward healing. The moment you realize you've sidelined your needs is the same moment you can begin to bring them back into view. You can change the narrative. You can begin again. This doesn't require a complete reinvention. It starts with small recommitments to yourself. Carve out time that's just for you. Speak up when something doesn't feel right. Treat your body kindly. Let joy in, even if it feels unfamiliar at first. You've spent years giving to others. Now it is time to give back to the person who made all that generosity possible. You. Whether you're 60 or 90, you are allowed to say, "This moment is for me." You're allowed to discover new interests, set new boundaries, and write new chapters. Ones where your name is not just in the acknowledgements, but on the title page. No matter how much time you've spent putting yourself last, there is still time to choose yourself without apology. Because forgetting yourself wasn't the end of your story, remembering yourself, that's where it truly begins. Regret 6. I waited too long to forgive others and myself. Forgiveness is one of the most misunderstood human experiences. Many people think it's about letting someone off the hook. But for older adults who carry the weight of unresolved conflict, the deepest regret isn't just what someone did. It's that they waited too long to let go. Some held on to pain from a betrayal that happened 20, 30, even 40 years ago. A friend who turned cold, a family member who said something cruel, a partner who left, a sibling who never showed up. The ache stayed hidden beneath layers of busyness, pride, or silence. But it was always there, taking space in the heart like a stone no one could quite remove. And for many, the hardest person to forgive wasn't someone else. It was themselves. They judged the choices they made, the mistakes they couldn't fix, the years they think they wasted. Regret becomes a slow poison when paired with self-blame. "If only I had," is a phrase that echoes through too many sleepless nights in old age. But here's the truth. Forgiveness isn't approval. It's freedom. To forgive is not to say what you did was okay. It's to say, I'm no longer willing to carry the weight of what you did. And when it comes to forgiving yourself, it's not saying, I was right. It's saying, I was human, and I deserve peace now. Forgiveness is not weakness. It is one of the most powerful and mature choices a person can make, and yet so many people delay it. Why? Because holding on feels like control. Anger feels safer than grief. Guilt feels more honest than compassion. But none of it heals. It takes courage to release the narrative of hurt. But older adults who finally do, even decades later, describe it as one of the most liberating moments of their life. So why wait? Forgiveness doesn't require a perfect moment or the other person's apology. It requires a decision, a turning inward, a willingness to stop letting the past ruin the present. You can forgive quietly. You can forgive without reconciliation. You can forgive someone who is no longer alive. You can forgive without forgetting, because forgiveness is not about memory, it's about peace. You can also forgive yourself for the words you didn't say, the time you didn't take, the years you feel you lost. That version of you did the best they could with what they had. That person still deserves kindness. Some people spend a lifetime building walls out of old pain. But what if you took one brick down, just one? What if you let the sunlight in? Forgiveness isn't a single act, it's a practice. Some days it's easier, some days it hurts. But over time it softens what was once hard. It creates room for joy to return. The biggest regret isn't usually the hurt itself, it's the years lost after the hurt. Years that could have been lighter, freer, more at peace. If you're carrying something heavy, this is your invitation. Not because the past didn't matter, but because your future still does. Let it go, not for them, for you. Regret 7. I thought it was too late to start again. There is a unique kind of sorrow that comes not from what was done, but from what was never even tried. As people enter their later years, many carry a quiet ache, not because they failed, but because they never gave themselves permission to begin. They wanted to paint, to write a book, to travel alone, to take a class, to say I love you again, to make peace with someone, to learn something new, to move somewhere warmer, to try living differently. But they thought, it's too late, I'm too old, that season has passed. So they settled, they stayed, they shrank their world to what felt safe. And with every year their dreams, even the small quiet ones, moved further out of reach. This regret doesn't scream, it whispers. It lingers in long afternoons and quiet holidays. It sits beside the question, what if? Because here's what no one tells you when you're younger. Most of the time the barrier isn't age, it's fear. It's the internal voice saying, you missed your window. But in truth, that window is open far longer than we think, if we are willing to look through it. Some of the most fulfilled older adults are not those who did everything early, but those who dared to begin again late. The man who picked up the guitar at 70 and played it badly, joyfully like a child. The woman who moved to the coast at 76 and finally slept to the sound of waves. The grandmother who started therapy at 82 and began healing for the first time. The widower who joined a dance class at 85 and met a new companion. None of them were too late. They were right on time because they said yes to now. Starting again doesn't mean turning life upside down. It can be a small yes to curiosity, a willingness to explore, a choice to grow. Your next chapter does not have to look like your last one. What if the second act of your life could be the most honest? What if it was the one where you stopped living by expectation and started living by joy? The idea that aging is only decline is one of the greatest myths of our time. In truth, many people don't come fully alive until their 60s, 70s, or 80s because they finally stop performing and start being real. So if there's something calling to you, even faintly, listen. Maybe it's a language you always wanted to learn, a garden you want to grow, a conversation you need to have, a city you want to visit, a story you still want to tell. Do it badly, do it scared, do it late, but do it. Because the clock may be ticking, but you are still here. And as long as you are here, your story is not over. The greatest tragedy isn't failure. It's never stepping into the life that was still waiting for you. If no one ever told you this before, let me be the one to say it clearly. Aging is not an end. It's a shift, and you're allowed to shift with it. You're allowed to reinvent yourself at 67. You're allowed to fall in love again at 79. You're allowed to start a podcast, a garden, a memoir, at any age. You're allowed to make mistakes and still laugh through them. The real tragedy isn't in being older. The tragedy is living as if your best days are only behind you. Life is still happening. There is still air in your lungs, wisdom in your hands, and light in your spirit. So what if your knees ache? So what if you move slower? So what if your circle is smaller? Your mind still dreams, your heart still beats, your story still unfolds. Every day you wake up is another chance to turn too late into right now. And you don't have to do it alone. There are others out there, so just like you, searching for meaning, for purpose, for connection. Community doesn't have an expiration date. Dreams don't either. You are not done. You are just different. And different can be beautiful. Different can be free. So write that page, make that call. Try that thing you put off for years. Begin again, not because time is running out, but because the part of you that's been waiting finally deserves to begin. If you've made it this far, take a deep breath. Not out of exhaustion, but recognition. These regrets we've explored aren't meant to shame or wound you. They're mirrors. They reflect the hidden truths many carry but rarely say out loud. And now that they've been spoken, you have a choice. You can do nothing and let these regrets settle like dust on old memories. Or you can let them wake something in you. Something quiet but alive. A decision to be more honest. A willingness to choose yourself. A readiness to let go of the weight you've carried too long. You are not defined by the years behind you. You are defined by what you do with the years ahead. Every moment you have left is still yours to shape. You can speak up, forgive, begin again. Set a boundary. Let someone in. Say the thing you've always meant to say. You don't need anyone's permission. There is dignity in reflection, but there is power in action. So if you're holding even one regret in your heart, do something small today to rewrite its story. Call someone. Say no to something that drains you. Say yes to something that scares you. Sit with yourself and listen, not to judgment, but to truth. Because the end of one chapter is never the end of the book. And no matter your age, you still hold the pen. What you write next, that's up to you.